So welcome to Talking Absolute Worship, and welcome to Easter 4. We will be looking at bits of Acts, Psalm 23, bits of Revelation, and bits of John chapter 10. And the first thing you'll notice is this is a head-to-head. This is an experiment. It's just me and Rachel, and any comparisons to Griff Rhys-Jones and Mel Smith will not be appreciated. But this is a head-to-head with the two of us just talking absolute worship for Easter 4. So Rachel, no surprises, you're going to go first because it's either you or me. So please, kick off. Where are you going?
Well, part of me really wanted to do something with Revelation, because it doesn't come around all that often in the lectionary, and I usually kind of go ugh, and try to avoid it. So I was kind of trying really hard, but actually the thoughts that were coming to me were more around some of the other readings. So unfortunately, Revelation is put aside somewhat. But the sense that I got just from reading and reflecting on those readings was the thought that came to mind was that sometimes you just don't know what to do. And I think in some ways that partly may be a reflection of where we are at the moment. As we're recording this, we're about 3 to 4 weeks into the invasion of Ukraine, and lots of us are just thinking, I don't know what to do. I want to do something that's going to be helpful, but I don't know what to do. And I seem to spend a lot of time just kind of lost in thought almost, but just thinking, what can I do? And then that's alongside all the other why questions. Why is this happening? So I really felt an affinity to the reading from Acts, in which Tabitha has died, and she's clearly a beloved member of her Christian community. It says she came ill and died. I mean, that all sounds very sudden, but we don't know whether they had any way to prepare for this, or whether it really was, as quick as that. But just that sense of, well, what do we do now then? That follows any big bereavement, really. What do we do now? And they realise that Peter's not that far away. And so they say, okay, let's get here. Peter's going to help us. And I wonder if they really got what they expected, actually, because they might just have been thinking, well, we just need Peter to lean on. We just need his presence. He is the rock, after all. We just need his presence with us. That's going to help. And then actually, it turns out, in a way, they get Tabitha back. That may not have been on their minds at all when they sent the message. So I felt that there was quite a lot of kind of chaos going on in that reading from Acts. There's a bewildered community, lots of stuff. They're showing Peter all the things that Tabitha has made and trying to sort of tell him all about her. So there's quite a lot going on. And then I felt that it's a bit of a contrast with the John reading, which seemed to me to come in two parts, really. You've got the busy part where the religious leaders are sort of demanding to know, come on, tell us, give us a straight answer here. And Jesus is saying, well, I've already given you a straight answer, and you're not believing me or listening to me anyway. But you've got that. And then I felt that there was just a sort of kind of calmness about the second part of reading, where Jesus then talks about, you don't understand because you don't belong to my sheep, but and that sense of, I know my sheep, they hear my voice, they follow me. And I just felt like I could imagine Jesus talking in a really calming, let's kind of just let's bring things down kind of voice. And just a sense of maybe peace around that. He knows his sheep and he's not going to let go of them. And so for me today, I just feel that in the midst of all this, not knowing what to do and thinking about people dealing with all sorts of loss, for whatever reason at the moment. There's just a lot of loss in the air, it seems. And we kind of stumble around calling out to Jesus in quite a degree of bewilderment and confusion, and relying on Jesus to hold us, really, and to bring us through. And I think if I were to dip into Revelation, I would say we don't come through unscathed, because these things change us. And we've got in Revelation the worshippers have come through this great ordeal, whatever that quite means, and they gather and they worship. The Lamb is still their shepherd, and so I felt very calm, and maybe that's something that we could all hold on to at the moment. The other thing that I came to discover, which I don't know if I could do anything with it, is that we're preparing for the 8th of May, Easter 4, and on the 8th of May in 1373, Julian of Norwich had her visions, which led her to the sense of Jesus wanting us to turn to him, and that love is kind of the answer, to give a very simplified version of all of her stuff. So I don't know if there might be something around Julian of Norwich that can be drawn on to, but I think I'm just going with, we don't know what to do, and Jesus doesn't tell us what to do either, in not in very specific detailed ways, but we're held by Jesus. That was, I think that was where I was going to go.
And I wonder too if there's kind of an element of surprise as you were talking then, and thinking, that we don't know what to do. The people call out for Peter, and they're expecting one thing and they get another, because it does feel like a funeral visit, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Showing him all the things. It's not a come immediately because you can do something, or bring her back to life. That's not what they're expecting. It's because we want to share our grief with you, and Peter turns that on the head. And I'm kind of wondering whether in Revelation too, I mean, I run a mile from things like washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb.
Right.
But again, maybe it's just meant to say, be ready to be surprised. It's not ordinary. It's not what you expect. If you wash something in the blood of a lamb, it really isn't going to be cleaner. So there's something against our expectations going on.
Yeah.
And I do love that God will wipe away every tear from their eyes.
Yeah.
Because it kind of isn't even God will make it that there's nothing to cry about. There's an acknowledgement of the pain, but then God Himself, So there is something that draws me to the Revelation reading, even while there's something that sends me back.
And the similarities with the Psalm as well in Revelation, I think, about hungering no more and thirsting no more. It just felt like, and with the whole lamb shepherd idea, I just felt that actually it picked up on Psalm 23, which is the Psalm for the day again.
Does seem to come around a lot, but it's a good one. But yes, and even there, I don't know, is there a surprise? It's hard to be surprised by Psalm 23, but I think it might even been on a previous Talking Absolute Worship that somebody said, you've spread a table before me in the presence of those who trouble me, presence of my enemies, whatever translation, that can feel like gloating. So you're sat at the table with God and you can to your enemies, or is it an invitation to sit down with your enemies? The table is spread, and it's open for those who were enemies to come. So it's a place of mediation, if you like. So again, is it a surprise? Do we want in the psalm God to say, yes, I'm on your side and I'm not on their side? I know there's been, with the Ukraine stuff, there's been quite a lot of people saying, should we be praying for Russia? And you think, well, yes, what sort of God do you believe in if you're only going to pray for the people of Ukraine? Of course we pray for the people of Ukraine, but we also pray for the people of Russia.
yeah,
So yeah, something I quite like any Bible reading where there's something that catches you a little bit on the hop.
mm,
Um, and maybe some of that is in what Jesus says about the sheep hearing my voice. You were saying about, we cry out to Jesus in our distress and wanting help and not knowing what to do. And maybe this reminds us to listen
yeah,
and be calm enough to see, well, what is Jesus saying back
yeah,
to us?
yeah,
So there's certainly plenty of richness to be
mm,
mined for
mm,
Easter fall.
yeah,
I had fun with the Acts 9 and the story of Tabitha, um, and 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 this may be completely completely spurious, and I'm not a linguist, so it was the name Tabitha. I think it's a great name
no,
and interesting, which in Greek is Dorcas, which we all know from the Reels of Thread.
yeah,
Um, but the so what? Why Tabitha if she's also Dorcas? Why not one or the other? Why have we got both now? What's going on? And then there was something about the Tabitha get up made my brain go, ooh,
mm,
and go to Mark's telling of the story of the raising of Jairus' daughter. And you just said she was a beloved member of the community. Jairus was the leader of the synagogue. So there's that kind of, this isn't just a death, if anything is ever just a death. But this is the death of a beloved member of
mm,
the community. And in Mark's account, there's that bit where they say to Peter, "Please come to us without delay." And in Mark, there's that terrible tension of Jairus' daughter is ill, and Jesus is told to come, and come on, come on, come on. You can feel Jairus kind of, and then he gets the message, well, she's died. He's distracted, diverted by the healing of the woman with the hemorrhage, and then returns to Jairus' daughter and says, Talitha
yeah,
cum,
yeah,
little girl, get up. And because I'm not a linguist, I did a bit of looking around, and that's the Aramaic Talitha cum. And so I thought, well, so did Peter say in Aramaic Tabitha cum? Was there something in Peter's mind that he didn't just click into what did they want Peter to do, but he really was thinking, well, what did Jesus do? He heard the voice of Jesus, if you
mm,
like. He
mm,
heard Jesus saying, he was there at the time, he recollected that story, and was there something in his brain that just went Tabitha, Talitha, or is that only me? So
yeah,
I think
mm,
I quite like to play with that as a Peter listening to Jesus, to the voice of Jesus,
yeah,
and then using that as the guide for what to do, which then surprises everybody by not being what they wanted. I'm aware that some people, and I'm kind of one of them really, would say, but the Mark, Jairus' daughter, they haven't put the lectionary, didn't make that connection. They haven't put them together.
no,
I think, well, sometimes we can go a little bit off piste. So I think I would quite like if I use that Act 9 to put it with the Mark
yeah,
story, and just that whole what would Jesus do, you know
yeah,
it hangs around because sometimes it's exactly what we need to ask.
yeah,
But what would Jesus say? What do we want to say to Jesus? And what do we hear Jesus saying? And how does it shape what we do? Was
yeah,
kind of where I went with that one. I too, I'm afraid, kind of skipped over Revelation, though I wondered. Um, there's always something about the worship of heaven and the worship of earth, and are there ways in which we can make our earthly worship more heavenly?
mm,
Um, but that's kind of as far as I got,
yeah,
really. But that's something that other people might want to explore as they're looking at,
yeah,
at this. And certainly there's something there about suffering and coming through suffering, and Jesus the Lamb who also suffers and is with us, but then God the Father who will wipe every tear from their eyes, who kind of
mm,
sets it all right in the end.
mm,
I didn't get much further than that because Revelation's quite hard unless you're going to maybe go into it week by week and really
yeah.
unpack it.
Yeah.
And then I had a lovely conversation just this last weekend with a sheep farmer, as you do, in a congregation I was visiting. Um, and he said, "Oh, I've got to go because I've got a ewe who's just struggling a bit, and I've just got to sort of check on her." And then he came back later. I didn't look to see how well he washed his hands, but I was struck by he said, "Oh yes, it was like this, but its feet weren't out far enough." And I've watched enough farming programs to know, yeah, it's like diving into a pool,
Yeah.
the feet out. So yeah, having its feet up by its chin. So and he sort of mimed a bit of pushing and pulling in a way that, again, this was a man I was sharing lunch with. So I really didn't want to think about where his hands had
No.
been. But and I said to him, I see lambs, and my heart leaps as high as the lambs do. I love to see lambs, and I spend all my time driving around. Oh lambs, I just love it. I said, but you've got all the worry. Do you feel as excited? And he lit up and he said, "Oh, I never tire of seeing a lamb born."
Mm.
He said, "And I'm so upset when one dies."
Yeah.
And he told me this very sad story of two beautiful twin lambs, and they were in this field, and there were some logs in the corner, and they must have jumped on it. One of the logs fell, and he was clearly, and this is a man with, I don't know, dozens, hundreds, I think, of
Yeah.
sheep.
Yeah.
You think, but he really loves every lamb. And there was just something a bit of, that because we use the language of good shepherd so much, maybe we need to get back to, that the shepherd loves. I do
Yeah.
love my sheep, as another
Yeah.
farmer in Devon said to me once. You know, yeah, they and the way that the sheep respond to the person and the love and the care.
Mm.
So I sort of wanted to, because of having that conversation,
Yeah.
just wrap all of this John 10 up in a sense of the love of
Yeah.
Jesus and the
Yeah.
care of Jesus for each one of us.
Because sheep need a shepherd. They're not known for their independence.
Mm,
Um, and they're always, you hear about them getting, I don't know, stuck in a ditch, or you feel like they're in some ways pretty useless.
yes,
um, they need kind of ongoing support and sometimes quite hands-on
yes. Well,
nurture.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's maybe a good way to go. Going back to what you were saying about the Acts reading,
Mm,
the same thought kind of occurred to me about the two stories,
mm,
because I had a distinct memory, because it was only yesterday that I put these things together. I remember, it must have been decades ago, there was a question in church about what Jesus said to the little girl, and I put my hand up and I answered, and I said, "Tabitha cum." And they said, "Oh, no, it's Talitha." And I went, "Oh, okay." And so, and it must have traumatized me somewhat, because I was probably a teenager when this happened. And then yesterday, when I was reading the two passages, that whole thing just came back to me, and I thought, you know what, I wasn't that far wrong. Because
absolutely.
I do think the other thing that interested me about the names was that I've got a little note in my Bible that said Tabitha in Aramaic and Dorcas in Greek both mean gazelle. And I read one kind of slightly irritating commentary that kept referring to her as gazelle all the way through, which I found a little bit distracting. And then I was it took me almost into Song of Solomon, with the whole, there's a lot of gazelles mentioned in that book, which is a bit of a tangent. But yeah, the fact that we've got both names given and both names mean the same thing. I didn't have time to really wonder about that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, now you've got me wondering even um, whether Peter actually said Talitha cum, and people misheard and thought he assumed he'd said Tabitha cum.
Yeah,
But again, linguists will say, oh no, it's Talitha and Tabitha, or there
yeah,
may be
yeah,
complete differences which the written word doesn't communicate to me. Um, but I think, yeah, maybe it's not so
yeah,
fanciful to link those stories. And if a teenage Rachel had said to me, it's Tabitha, I would have said, "Oh, you're nearly there." Just
Yeah.
and maybe her name was Tabitha. We don't know her name,
No, that's very
so
true. Yeah.
who knows? But yeah, yes, I too. I'm sure many of us are scarred by putting your hand up and getting things wrong in church, and I
Mhm.
try very hard not to ever say that someone is wrong, or I try not to ask questions actually, which are those sorts of questions.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
there we are. Things have
Yeah.
moved on, even in the very short time since you were a teenager. So there we
Yes.
and me. So anything else? I mean, and I love the idea. Sorry, your idea of the Julian of Norwich kind of resonance as well. That's another way in which you could shape worship in a way that was much more around Julian of Norwich and was a lot more quiet and reflective. And yeah, that's a
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
nice invitation too. Anything else that you've got that you wanted to the other bits of worship?
Other bits of worship. I'm going to tell you a story about Julian of Norwich, because a number of years ago, I was selling some theological books on Amazon because I was having a bit of a cull, and I'd got 2 copies of the of Julian of Norwich's Revelations of Divine Love, so I put one up for sale, and I had a message that came to me through Amazon from a nun in Switzerland. And because I wasn't set up for selling overseas, she was wondering if I could make it so that she could buy this book. And I wasn't really, it was only a paperback book. And I replied to her. I was a bit naughty because I then bypassed the whole official route and contacted her directly, and they said, I want you to have the book. I don't want you to pay for it. Send me your address, and I will send it to you. So I did that. Now, every year on religious holidays, and on the feast of Julian of Norwich, this lovely nun writes me an email, and so we always just are in sporadic contact. And then just before the pandemic, we'd been to Italy, and we were on the journey home driving through Switzerland, and we'd stopped for lunch at Lucerne, and Graham said to me, "Oh, I wonder how far we are away from the convent." And I had to look, and it was literally going to take us half an hour out of our way. So we just decided, right, we're going to go and visit her. So we turned up at this convent, and in sort of, in very old GCSE French, I dragged up enough to ask for this lovely sister, and they gave us some food and drink while we were waiting for her to come through. And she was so excited, she literally ran out to meet us. And then she said, "Oh, I must go and get my friend, because I've told my friend all about you. I must go and get my friend to meet you too." So this other lovely, and they were both really giddy. They were so excited to see us. And then she brought out some books about Julian of Norwich, and she wanted me to have some of her books. And it was just lovely. So every time I hear anything about Julian of Norwich, I think about this lovely person who's become a friend. And so that's a bit of a tangent. But I do think there's so much about Julian of Norwich that could easily shape worship. I mean, the whole idea, you could do a whole reflection on this idea about, the hazelnut, and like everything being contained within it, and all of kind of God's love being somehow poured into that, and we're like the hazelnut, and all things will be well. I think that's another one of her things, that doesn't mean everything's going to be okay, but it means that we're going to come through, kind of stuff. So I think I do a lot with Julian of Norwich in the rest of the service.
And that all will be well, I mean, links really well with the reading we've both been trying to avoid of Revelation, actually.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the idea of God holding in being, and that sense. And I love your story, the way that love breaks through in simple ways, but also is this massive force that holds us all in being. I think that would be wonderful to do in worship.
Yeah.
I've got a cautionary tale to spread. Different sort of story. I'm going to share my screen. Um, I had a look around to see, what's out there on YouTube about Jesus. I was looking for something about the love of Jesus as the shepherd. And there were lots of cartoons of stuff, and it was all a bit kind of what you'd expect. And since my brain was already thinking, how do you surprise and how do you find God in the surprises? So this is a bit surprising. This, and it may of course go to an advert which we will then rely on. Sorry, I'm struggling to do two things at once. I'm struggling even to do one thing at once. We'll rely on Phil to cut out um, anything that appears that shouldn't appear, of adverts for
Yeah.
teeth whitening or whatever. There we go. It was onto the Zoom startup page. Share sound. You definitely want that. And there we go. So there is sound, but this is the point at which the priest has gone out and we don't know what's going to happen next. So here's the surprise. And if I press play, it'll actually move. There we go.
You want to get the door for me? There we go. Thank you. So this is our new pet. This is Peanut. What do you think? Is Father Martel going to like it? All right, so as some of you may know, I couldn't get a dog, but I put on Facebook earlier that I wanted to get a sheep. And some people said, normally, Father, people ask to borrow a cup of sugar, and you're asking to borrow a sheep. So I really wanted to get a sheep for my last Good Shepherd homily here because they're a beautiful image for us. Sheep are sometimes a little bit scared and a little bit timid and a little bit afraid. But I just met the sheep, by the way, too, right before Mass. And the good thing is, shepherds have a way of getting to know their sheep. They do. So even this sheep, Peanut, who I just met before Mass, already you can see we're going to get along, right? What I love about it, too, is the image of the Good Shepherd, the sheep is often held like this. The Good Shepherd is holding the sheep. And what is so cool about it, like right now, I can feel the warm breath of this sheep on my head, right? I can feel this. It's really, really soft. There's like a pillow on me right now. I can feel the softness of the sheep. The other thing is if I go like this and listen real close, I can even hear the heartbeat of the sheep. And it's really an amazing thing how close a shepherd is to his sheep. And that's why I think Jesus gives us this image of the Good Shepherd, is so that we can realize how close he is to us. Now, boys and girls, you're going to be receiving your first communion.
And at that point, it goes off a bit because these boys and girls, you're going to receive communion, and closeness with Jesus was kind of his theme. But I just thought, first of all, kudos for having a live sheep in a service. But I didn't know which way he was going with all that. And I did think behind every good priest, there's a woman waiting to catch the sheep if the sheep makes a break. There's a little bit of that. But that bit where he says, I can hear the heartbeat, touched me.
Yeah.
Really, it really did. And there was something there about the love of Jesus. And I think I'd always thought of the shepherd as a caring metaphor, but I'd never quite got the loving bit before. So I am not going to take a live sheep into worship ever, anytime ever.
No.
I was going to say anytime soon, but I don't think I would dare to, especially in a white cassock.
Yeah, I did think that was brave.
Very brave, very brave. But it's lovely to see that and hear that and to really explore the Jesus as Good Shepherd in that way. And I just thought that was so brave. The fact that it was being filmed, I'm deeply appreciative. So we could all share it. So that was my bit really. And whether I might show that in worship, or depending on where I am, and I haven't looked up actually to see where I am. Some of the congregations I visit, there are shepherds and who do have sheep, and it would be lovely, actually, just as my conversation last weekend, to get one of the actual shepherds to say how they feel about their sheep, and to hear something of the love and care, and that's probably what I would aim to do, to unpack that bit.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah, I was just thinking while I was watching the video as well. Actually, it might be nice to do something with some kind of wool in the prayers. I've had a big kind of well, not massive, but I've had a kind of loom that I've used before, and there's been, you know, lots of bits of wool, and I've invited people to kind of weave their prayer into the overall thing. And I think you can fairly easily get hold of you know, proper wool that's not yet been spun, but is kind of treated enough that you can probably do it yourself with your fingers into something. And I think maybe there's something to do with that would be a nice thing to do.
I think anything that helps people feel they've done something in prayer and they've left something behind. I think that's why lighting a candle is so powerful.
Yeah.
Because when you've gone away, the candle's still there. The idea that your prayer isn't lost somehow. It's not just a moment and then it's gone, but your prayer is there. Almost maybe that God's holding your prayer like the shepherd's holding the sheep, you know, and is as attentive to our heartbeat in prayer. Yeah, it would be nice to do something for people to feel there's a solid symbol of their prayer which carries on. I think prayer trees, ribbons on railings, all sorts of things that I think show we all want to do something, so that it's not just words, although there's nothing wrong with words, but something that symbolises the prayer and helps other people to join in prayer. I like the idea of weaving them together. Lovely. Well, for our first head-to-head, I think that's gone pretty well. So we want to bless everyone who's listened to this as you prepare for worship, and hopefully you too can be part of this conversation and take some of these ideas and your own ideas, and much more importantly, to the congregations you serve. So Rachel is going to pray for all of us.
Let's pray. Loving God, sometimes we sit down to prepare to lead worship on a Sunday and we think we don't know what to do. And I pray that for all those who are going to be leading worship on the 8th of May, I pray that you would speak through the Bible passages and perhaps through some of the things that we've talked about today. Pray that you would enable people who lead others in worship to help people to draw near to you and to gain a sense of peace and surprise and love through all that we say. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.